Hello and welcome back to Get Up and Game. My name is Josh, and in this video I'm going to be ranking all of the heroes and Marvel champions by how good I think they play in solo. And the way that I'm going to do this, I came up with 5 categories that I think are very important for a hero to play particularly well in solo, and that's something I want to emphasize here. I think pretty much every hero in the game can play decently well in solo, and they absolutely all can play in solo. What we're trying to do here is figure out the ones who play really, really well in solo, the best ones in solo, and possibly maybe even the very, very best hero to play in solo. So for each of the 5 categories here, I have 1 card from each of the heroes' kits, so there's 41 cards in each stack. We're going to go through each stack one at a time, and I'm going to speed rank every single card, whether or not I think it counts as playing particularly well in that category or not. So even if a hero is decent or okay in a category, they need to play really, really well to score a point. Because in order to be the best hero to play in solo, you have to be really good in every category, not just okay or so-so. And since we have over 200 cards to go through, I'm mostly going to be going just by gut reactions and my remembered experiences with those heroes. Of course, these are all just my opinions and how I found them to be when I played them solo. And this is all just for fun. Now, I also would like to use this video to say thank you to the 1,200 people who have been kind enough to press the subscribe button while watching my videos. Every 100 subscribers now, I like to make a special video to say thank you. And normally that comes in the form of a completely ridiculous playthrough, like ASMR or Hot Wings. But since I'm already doing 12 playthroughs this month with the 12 Plays of Christmas, I figured we don't need another one of those. So this seemed like a fun thing to do instead. So thank you so very, very much to everyone who has been kind enough to subscribe to the channel. And if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed and you like this kind of content, I invite you to subscribe and follow along with me. All right, are you ready to figure out who is the best solo hero in Marvel Champions? Let's do it. So for the first category, we're going to be talking about how easy it is for the hero to get set up, how reliant they are on certain upgrades, and how well they can just come out of the gate managing the board. Because when you're playing solo, you don't really have a lot of time to get out all of your key upgrades before you start trying to take control of the board. You have to be able to set up at least decently quickly. Whereas in multiplayer, you have a lot more opportunity to take your time and get things set up. So I'm going to be looking for heroes here that don't rely on certain cards to be in play before they start being effective. To be one of the best in solo, you have to be able to take control of the game quickly. So I've just shuffled up the cards, so we're just going to go through them randomly and see what we come up with. So first off, we see Vision. I think he does get a really fast start between his gem and his cape. That's really all he's looking for. His events are very versatile and powerful, so he should be able to do well regardless of what he starts with in play. Dweethite Mastery Drax definitely requires some setup to start being effective. He needs to get a knife out. He really needs this card. So we're going to call that a no for ease of setup. Doctor Strange, similar to Vision, he would like to get his resource card and his cape out, but he doesn't need them. He can just start casting spells right from the start of the game, so I think he does score a point for being easy to set up. Cyclops is another one that I don't think requires a lot to get set up. The Quartz Visor is nice. And of course, he's going to want some of those X-Men supports in play, most likely, but he can manage the board pretty well without having to put a bunch of things in play. Colossus needs quite a bit of setup, I think. Captain Marvel doesn't need a lot of setup. She's got so many resources, and her cards just play so well right out of her hand. Captain America doesn't need any setup at all. He can simply discard a card to ready, and he's good to go. Black Widow, I think, takes a lot of setup before she can start being really strong. Star-Lord doesn't need much setup at all. He'd like to get his helmet and an element gun, but they aren't required, and his ability allows him to play cards to the table quickly to get moving. Spider-Woman doesn't need much setup at all. The finesse is nice, but her events are so strong that those are going to be good enough to get her going. Same thing with, let's see, this is the Peter Parker Spider-Man. This is pretty much the only upgrade he wants to get into play, so he is ready to get moving as soon as the game starts. Same with Miles. He plays very similarly in that way. I do think Spider-Ham requires a decent amount of setup before he starts being really strong. Oh, he's just really strong all around, but I don't think he scores a point for being easy to set up. Spectrum does very well in this category. She's going to have 3 in whatever stat you want her to have, and she doesn't need any cards in play for that. I think War Machine does require to get at least a couple of his upgrades out before he starts being really strong. Iron Man, I mean, the definition of not easy to set up. Venom, this is one of the only things that's going to hold Venom back, I think, is you do need to get some cards in play before he starts being as effective as he could be. So he does not score a point for being easy to set up. Ironheart, similar. You know, there's these upgrade heroes. They're so fantastic once they get rolling, but they definitely need a few turns to set up before they start getting really strong. So I don't think that Ironheart is going to get a point for that. Now, Valkyrie, she needs her sword and she needs this, but she's pretty much going to be able to do what she's able to do right from the start of the game. So I'm actually going to give her a point for being easy to set up. She doesn't need too much. Valhalla helps, but I don't think it's necessary. Wolverine, I mean, yeah, he's just going to start throwing lunging strikes from the start of the game because he already has his claws in play. He has some other upgrades that would be nice, but I don't think they're necessary. Hulk is actually easy to set up, similar to Wolverine. He's just going to come out of the gate swinging. He doesn't really need anything in particular that he's looking for. SPDR, considering that 25% of her kit is designed to help her find the other cards that she needs to get into play, is not what I would call easy to set up. Hawkeye is a tricky one because you get the bow right away, but you would really like the quiver and the expert marksman to be as strong as he could be. I think we're not going to give him a point for being easy to set up. That one's could go either way for me. Thor gets to start with a hammer, and that's super nice. He'd really like to get his energy cards out because of his low hand size, and he would like to get out Asgard because of his low hand size, so I think he's not easy to set up. I think he needs a little bit of help. Storm, the fact that she starts with the weather cards and they already are so strong, she doesn't need much in play, and she only has a couple upgrades anyway that are pretty optional. She's definitely easy to set up. She's going to get a point for that. Black Panther, kind of similar to Iron Man, he really does need to get these out quickly to start being effective. Now, he gets to start with one in his hand for sure, but I don't think he'd be considered easy to set up because you've got all those Wakanda Forevers in his deck, and then if he doesn't get these out, you're drawing a bunch of those that aren't very useful, so I think he needs a decent amount of setup. Ant-Man just needs this helmet so bad, and the Army Advance to start being really, really strong. Now, I do want to give him a point just because when he flips forms, he automatically gets to deal damage or remove threat, and that is a very useful thing to be able to do right off the start, but I think he needs cards to really, really get going. Adam Warlock definitely needs to get set up. He wants those Mystic Senses. He wants his cape. He wants his staff. Once he gets rolling is amazing, but I think he does require a decent amount of setup before he gets strong. Gamora, you know, these event-driven heroes, they're just coming out of the gate so fast. The interesting thing about that, though, is I want to be clear. I'm not saying these other heroes are bad just because they don't come out of the gate swinging. It's just a difference in style, and I think it is important in solo to be starting at a higher number. You know, Iron Man kind of starts at 0, and he's going to end the game at 100, whereas Gamora is going to start the game around 40. She's probably only going to end the game around 60. She's not going to get that much stronger, but in solo play, the fact that she comes out of the gate with her events being so efficient really, really makes her strong in this category. I think She-Hulk is really strong in this category too, just because she only wants to be punching, and she can easily do that from the beginning. She's got a lot of these, and she doesn't have any important upgrades, so we're going to give her a point for being easy to set up. Shadowcat is similar in that way. It is really nice if you can get out her 1 upgrades that exhaust to remove the free threat or deal the free damage, but I don't think they're really necessary. I think she just comes out of the gate. She's pretty event driven, and she is really strong just to get started. Similar to the Scarlet Witch, the crest is really nice, but she also doesn't really have any important upgrades. I think she gets a point for being easy to set up. Her events are so powerful that she doesn't need any help in that regard. Rocket really does need to get a couple of his upgrades out before he starts being super effective, so he does not get a point for being easy to set up. Quicksilver's another one. He really wants this, and he would like to get some of his stat boosting upgrades out before he starts really taking control of the board, so I think you need to spend a couple turns getting ready. And that's the thing that holds these heroes back in solo in this particular category, is just while you're taking a couple turns to set up, the villain is building their board position, and when you're ready to get caught up, it might be too late. So we're going to not give him a point for that. Wasp doesn't really need much setup, and it's a good thing because her upgrades aren't very good anyway, so we're going to give her a point for being pretty easy to set up. I don't think she has any cards that she's really looking for to start the game. Groot is a really weird one to grade because half of his cards don't care about having upgrades in play, but they do need the counters. And then, of course, he has a lot of upgrades that also... Yeah, I think the fact that he has to get counters to do all of his things is going to take time to set up. He does not get a point. Ghost Spider, similarly, I think without the web bracelets, it's really hard to play more than a couple cards out of her hand here and there because they're all pretty pricey. So she really needs to get these out, and she'd love to get George Stacy in play as well. So I don't think she gets a point for being easy to set up, though she can be really, really strong right out of the gate. But I think she needs a little bit of time to set up. The Phoenix definitely doesn't need anything to set up. She comes out. She's got a lot of really powerful events and upgrades that go on the minions, but there's not any particular cards she's looking to get into play. She's able to thwart for 3 right off the start of the game, which is just so strong. So she definitely gets a point for being easy to set up. Nova starts with the helmet in play, and then that's all he needs. So he's definitely very easy to set up in solo, no problem there. Nebula is kind of a tricky one for me. The only thing she really wants as far as upgrades go is her ship. But, you know, she also has to get some techniques down to start being useful. But those are actually pretty easy to play. She's well rewarded for playing. You know what? I'm going to say she is easy to set up as long as she gets a few techniques in her hand. So that's how we're going to call it, but that one's kind of close. And Ms. Marvel definitely needs a lot of time to set up. She's got to get it in big and out or a shrink, and she's got all those alter ego supports that she would like to get into play before she gets rolling. So I definitely think she does not get a point for being easy to set up. So if we look at the piles here, it looks like it's about half and half. Yeah, there are 22 heroes that got a point for being easy to set up. So that means there's, what, 19 that weren't. So it was about half and half as far as sort of event-driven, fast out of the gate heroes and more upgrade style heroes, or at least ones that are looking for a particular upgrade before they start being as effective as they could be. So that is the first category. So the second criteria, and what I think is so important to be a top tier solo hero, is your ability to manage the board. Board control is so important in solo because you have to be able to take care of everything. You don't have to be able to take care of everything perfectly, but you have to be able to at least manage all elements of the game well enough that it doesn't cause you to lose before you're able to win. Now, more often than not in this game, that's really going to boil down to which heroes are bad at thwarting, and I think we're going to see that play out here, but it's not always that. So it looks like we're starting off with Spectrum here. I think she is exceptionally good at board control. She's got a lot of powerful events that take care of things, and she can change forms when necessary to do what she needs to do. I think SBDR is also exceptionally good at board control once she gets set up, and that's where I'm kind of tempted to not give her a point for this, but because most heroes, once they get set up, they should be decent at board control, but she is really, really good at it. With all the readying she can do and using her basic stats repeatedly gives her so much versatility in board control. I think Groot is not super good at board control. He's not very good at managing the threat with his one thwart stat, and his threat card requires you to have a lot of growth counters. So he is not good at board control. I think She-Hulk is particularly bad at board control. She can kill the minions no problem, but she's really going to struggle with threat and solo. I think Ghost Spider is very good at board control. The fact that she can defend herself and still either kill minions or remove threat from side schemes at the same time is just absolutely phenomenal. Gamora, that's kind of her whole thing, is board control, so she is definitely very strong in that regard. Her events getting the extra threat removal and the extra damage is just incredibly powerful and efficient. Drax is just obviously very bad at board control. He could really lose to threat very easily, so he does not get a point for this category. Adam Warlock, I think, is really solid in the board control. He has his special ability where he can discard a card from his hand for the Battle Mage just to deal some damage or, remove threat and various things like that, and he has pretty good events, so he definitely gets a point for board control. Nebula, as much as I want to give her a point for this, I'm actually not going to, because all of her board control mostly relies on her techniques, and you just can't guarantee you're going to have certain ones in play. So there might be times where you have a side scheme you need to remove or something, and you just don't have a thwart one in play. You've got, other ones going on. So, she has a 2/2/2 stat line, so that really helps, but I think she's bad at board control just because her techniques are unreliable. Spider-Woman, all of her events are so efficient and good at removing threat and dealing damage, and the fact that she can boost her stats and then ready to use those boosted stats repeatedly, she is exceptionally good at board control. Storm, very similar in just the fact that she has access to her weather cards that give her free damage and free threat removal whenever she needs it, is definitely very strong in the category. She only has a 1 thwart stat without an upgrade, so that can work against her, but Hurricane really makes up for that as far as the thwarting goes. Miles Morales events are insanely powerful and do so much work for him that he is very, very good at board control, and he also has a 2/2 stat line, which gives him a lot of versatility in that regard. Now, I haven't played very much Colossus, I'll be honest, so my takes on him might not be super well informed. Fair warning to the big Colossus fans out there, but anytime I see a 1 thwart in solo, it just makes me automatically assume that they're not good at board control, and he doesn't have a single thwarting card in his kit, so I think he's really going to struggle with that in solo. You could build for it, but the point of this is just how good is the hero at it themselves, and I think he's probably real bad at thwarting. Wasp, I think, is pretty solid at board control. She has amazing damage events, so the minions definitely don't stand a chance. And her thwarting is pretty good. She has this to give her +2 when she changes into Giant, and her helmet boosts her thwarting as well. So I'm going to give her a point for board control. I think she's decent at it. Captain Marvel, for as strong as she is, I don't know if I really do think she's very good at board control. Her attack card is very expensive, and her thwart card isn't particularly efficient. So I'm actually not going to give Captain Marvel a point for that. You know, obviously she could play any card she wants out of her hand to deal with things, but I think the cards in her kit don't do particularly well in that direction. War Machine, I'm start sounding like a broken record here, but the heroes that don't thwart well, that's just something they're gonna struggle with in solo. And he can shuffle this back in when he goes to Alter Ego, which is nice. I feel like this is like always the card you shuffle back in with his Alter Ego ability when you flip down, because he just desperately needs it. So I'm gonna say he's not very good at board control. I think side schemes could really wreck him in certain scenarios. I think Kitty is amazing in this regard. Her events are very strong, and the Shadowcat Surprise doing damage and readying her gives her so much versatility that she can activate, deal 3 damage, and ready. I know that's not the card I'm holding right now. I have that in a different pile, but I just think her events are really strong, and she is very good at board control. Captain America, I mean, do I even need to say it? He's just so good at it. Black Widow is kind of like Nebula in a way, in that her cards, she kind of relies on the preparations to do her control 4, and her thwarting card is kind of expensive, though it does come with a confuse. But for whatever reason, my gut reaction is just that she's better at it than Nebula, so I'm just going to go with my gut here. I'm also not a Black Widow expert, so my takes on her might not be the best either. Wolverine is surprisingly good at board control. I think everybody assumed him to be really bad at thwarting, but, you know, he does have his animal instincts, and I think those should definitely play well into this category. And this 2 thwart stat and also this, I think he is a really strong at board control. Ms. Marvel can be, as long as she's well set up, and I think I'm going to go ahead and let that be true. I'm not going to hold that against her, so I think she is very good at board control. And the fact that she can return the cards to her hand and do it again, you know, if she needs to kill a couple minions or remove a lot of threat, makes her very strong. Multi-gun, like literally the best board control card in the game, so I think Venom gets a point for this category. Star-Lord is iffy. He's got the element gun, which is really going to help him kill minions. This gutsy move card is not very good, though. He does have a 2 thwart. I don't know. My gut feeling is that he's not super good at it, so that's where we're going to go. I don't know. I don't feel good about that one. I think Phoenix is really good. She's got the 3 thwart, which is going to be really nice early in the game, and then if you go to the Unleash side, she's got the 3 attack, and then she's got some readies in her kit. Just makes her very versatile, and her kit is like literally all over the place. She has cards that just do a little bit of everything, and some of that is definitely decent board control, especially when she's unleashed. Spider-Ham is kind of weird in that his basic powers, his basic activations are really strong as long as he has his upgrades out, and he has a collection of kind of weird cards. Like, he only has 1 copy of this Hogwash that's incredibly strong for board control, but it's just the 1. And then he has the Ham It Up. There's I think maybe a couple of them, but it relies on your tune counters. I think a combination of his basic activations and these makes him good at board control. Cyclops with his 2/2/2 stat line, and I probably shouldn't factor this in, but he's probably going to have an army of allies at his disposal to manage the board for him. So I think no matter how you play Cyclops, he's going to end up being good at board control. Hulk is terrible at board control. Hawkeye is decent at it. He's got this for threat removal, but he's only got a 1 thwart stat. You know what? If I don't feel strong about it, I feel like they shouldn't get a point. If they're not among the best, they don't get a point. So that's what we're going to do with Hawkeye. Sorry, Hawkeye. I really like you. I think Rocket is really, really, really good at board control. Actually, one of the best board controllers in the game. So he gets a point. You know, I've got a plan as an amazing thwart card, and then he's got all those damage upgrades to manage the minions. So yeah, he's exceptionally good at it. Same thing with Quicksilver. His versatility and his readying, this card's pretty good, but just his basic activations being used over and over again to remove threat and deal damage, spectacular board control. Spider-Man is really not very good at it. He's so good at defending and doing big chunks of damage, but he's not great at killing minions, and he's not super good at removing threat either. So Spider-Man does not get a point for board control. I think Nova does, though. His events are very cheap. They're very efficient. He can return them with Ms. Marvel, and you know, Unleash Nova Force really rewards him for managing the board. So I think he counts as being very good at it. Ironheart, I said something similar with Ms. Marvel. You know, she really has to get set up, but once she's super good at it, and I'm going to give her a point for that. Iron Man, probably one of the best in the game once he's set up. We're definitely going to give him a point. Same with Black Panther. See, this is one of those things. I said every hero, for the most part, can play very well in solo. And this is part of it. You know, their kits are designed to handle all the threats in the game. So I think most of them should score a point in this category. We'd be in trouble if most of them were bad at it. So if it feels like I'm giving a lot of people points for it, I think it should be that way. So yeah, Black Panther, he gets his upgrades out, and then with one Wakanda Forever, he can get so much work done. I think Doctor Strange is actually not super good at managing the board. I know he has lots of powerful effects, but often they're overkill for how expensive they can be. You know, Magic Blast is really, really powerful, but between this and his 2-cost spell, you know, which does 7 damage, I think he really kind of can be a little bit weak to minions, as strong as Doctor Strange is. I feel like Doctor Strange is really good at managing the villain, but I think the board can get away from him if things go wrong, so I'm actually not going to give him a point for this. Valkyrie is pretty terrible at removing threat. She's amazing at managing the minions, so she's not terrible at managing the board, but you know, her 1 thwart stat and this being her only threat removal card, which is, it just requires a lot of contingencies to happen in order to even trigger it. She does not get a point for this. Thor is kind of similar. This is a pretty decent threat removal card that was going to get you a minion, but that's probably going to draw you 2 cards, so it's a good thing. Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be using his basic activation to thwart, and then this isn't an amazing thwart card, so I'm going to say he is not good at board control. Man, Scarlet Witch is amazing at board control. Now, it can be a little spotty if Hexpole doesn't do what you want it to do, but you're probably going to be playing a couple of them every turn, it feels like, and so by the time you're done, you're going to end up removing everything. So she's definitely very good at board control, plus her basic activations are strong as well. I think Vision does get a point for this, but it can be a little iffy just because if he's in the wrong form and he doesn't have the cards, you know, if he wants to remove threat, but he's in a solid form. But I think he has the cards to overcome that. His kit is sort of designed to help him with that, so I think he is really strong in this category. And then Ant-Man, I think, is also very strong in this category. He's not super good at thwarting, but he can flip to Tiny and remove 1 for free, and then he can exhaust a thwart for 2 more. So I think Ant-Man, even though he doesn't have a good thwart event, he's so good at killing the minions, and I think he can manage the threat well enough that he gets a point for being good at board control. So this one was a little bit more lopsided, and like I said, I think it should be. If most of the heroes weren't good at board control, I don't think this would be a very fun solo game. So I'm kind of glad it worked out that way. The next category is survivability. You have to be able to not die in order to win the game. And this kind of comes in 2 flavors, either heroes that are really good at stunning and confusing the villain so they can avoid activations, or they just have such strong defense that they're able to keep themselves alive. Now, just having a strong defense isn't good enough because you still need to have something left over to manage the board. If you're investing all of your resources in your very strong defense, that's not going to play out very well in solo. So we'll see how that affects the heroes in this category. Looks like we're starting with Groot. Groot is exceptionally good at survivability. Just having those growth counters, he's automatically preventing damage, and he doesn't have to do anything special, so he can still do the other things he needs to do to get the work done in the game. I don't think Spectrum is particularly strong in survivability. She can certainly keep herself alive, but this isn't something I would consider a strength for her, so I'm not going to give her a point for this. I think SPDR does. She can defend so well. She has so many hit points, and she can easily take care of herself and still do the other things she needs to be doing in the game. Spider-Ham's survivability is amazing with his cartoon physics, reducing the villain's attacks down to 1. He can confuse, so he can go to alter ego to keep himself alive longer, and then he can heal for a giant chunk, so he definitely gets a point for this category. I kind of want to give Phoenix a point because she has this card, Rise from the Ashes, and she also has the telekinetic shield, but the fact that she could potentially bring out Consume the World and lose the game for everybody means she definitely does not get a point for survivability. She could literally end the world. Nova is one I don't think is particularly strong at keeping himself alive. He definitely needs help from like his aspect cards and stuff to keep himself alive. He doesn't have too much going for him in this category. Iron Man gets so many hit points from his upgrades, but I think he can really struggle early on in the game to stay alive, so I don't think he gets a point for this. Ironheart, I think, does. You know, she has a 3 defense, and she has so many other efficient cards that can handle the rest of the board for her that even if she is exhausting to defend early in the game to keep herself alive, I think that is fine for her. Hulk, this is actually a category I think he excels in. The fact that he starts with 18 hit points, he can easily get more. And then when you do flip down once in a while, you can recover to heal quite a bit. So I think Hulk does get a point for survivability. Captain Marvel, I think, does because she can heal 1 every single turn. Now, she has these cards. I don't know that these get played a lot and then used for their damage prevention ability, but it is there. And she has, I think, 12 hit points, so I am going to give her a point for this, but just barely. I don't think I give Storm a point for this. Flash Freeze is an amazing defense card, and she can also reduce the villain's attack with the Blizzard weather card, but my gut tells me that she's going to need help in other ways to stay alive. So I'm not going to give Storm a point for this. Star-Lord is actively trying to kill himself every second of the game. He does not get a point for this. Hawkeye is another one. We always think of him as very squishy, and yeah, I don't think he gets a point for this. Mockingbird is a really good way to keep him alive, but it requires a lot of setup to be able to be played frequently. So I'm not going to give Hawkeye a point for survivability. Captain America is amazing in this regard. The fact that shield block prevents all the damage is super good, and he can also just defend for 3 anyway. Nebula is another one that I don't think she gets a point for this. She has ways to prevent damage, and she can defend for 2, which is decent. But she definitely needs a little bit of help, I think, to keep herself alive. So she doesn't get a point for this. Black Widow, once she gets this out, is very, very good at keeping herself alive. And all of her abilities that prevent things from the villain, stopping boost effects, canceling encounter cards, stuff like that. Yeah, she is very good at keeping herself alive, which is, you know, thematically very appropriate for the character. Black Panther, if he gets this one out early, you know, the fact he's going to be able to heal every single turn, similar to Captain Marvel, and he can defend for 2. I think he is good at keeping himself alive. We're going to give Black Panther a point. Ant-Man, definitely. He's a tank. He has so much health. And he has the pin particles to heal him. I don't know why I picked Army Advance for this category, but that's what we've got. So, yeah, I think Ant-Man definitely gets a point for survivability. Adam Warlock, you know, he has that soul world that's going to heal him all the way back to full. This guy can block him with a toughness and then block again. I think he's pretty good at keeping himself alive, so we're going to give Adam Warlock a point for this. I mean, Shadowcat, that's like literally her whole thing. Same with Colossus. Wolverine, I feel like, is similar to Star-Lord in that he's sort of almost actively trying to kill himself. I know he heals for a lot. He gets the free healing. He has this card. He has his recovery stat, but you're investing a lot in just trying to keep yourself alive. Okay, I'll give him a point, but I don't feel super great about it. I'm breaking all my rules about my gut feelings, clearly. Wasp is, I think, pretty survivable. She's similar to Ant-Man. She's a bit of a tank, and she has these healing cards, which is really nice. And she can defend strongly. So, yeah, we're going to give Wasp a point for this. Quicksilver can easily get overrun and killed. He has this one stun, which is nice, but I do not think he is particularly strong in survivability in order to get a point. This card is so ridiculously strong for Spider-Woman, and the fact that she could potentially boost her defense really high and defend, and she can stun and confuse. Yeah, she definitely gets a point for survivability. Ms. Marvel, I think, does too. This card is incredibly strong, and she can, you know, exhaust to return it to her hand, so she could kind of always have this if she really wanted it. So I think Ms. Marvel is really good at keeping herself alive. Ghost Spider, she has this and the web binding. She has so many different ways. This card is so ridiculously strong for Spider-Woman, and the fact that she could potentially boost her defense really high and defend, and she can stun and confuse. Yeah, she definitely gets a point for survivability. Ms. Marvel, I think, does too. This card is incredibly strong, and she can, you know, exhaust to return it to her hand, so she could kind of always have this if she really wanted it. So I think Ms. Marvel is really good at keeping herself alive. Ghost Spider, she has this and the web binding. She has so many different ways, in my opinion, maybe a little bit too many different ways of stopping the villain from killing her, and she's going to be defending every turn anyway, so she is very strong in this category. This one's starting to look a little lopsided too, and again, we want the heroes to be more good at these things than they are bad at them, because, again, I think most of them do play pretty well in solo. Gamora, though, having said that, this card is amazing, but she doesn't really have anything else going for her. Now, she could be using her basic activation to defend because her events are going to do damage and remove threat for her. But I don't know, my gut's telling me she's not super great at survivability. Spider-Man, similar to Shadowcat, that's pretty much his whole thing. He has so many cards in his kit. He has the backflips, he has the webbed ups, and the enhanced spider sense, plus his defense. Yeah, if he's good at one thing, it's keeping himself alive. Thor, I think, counts as this just because he's a bit of a tank, especially because he does have access to godlike stamina. Maybe I shouldn't count that, and he can get extra 5 hit points here. So we're going to say Thor is good at keeping himself alive, but he's also trying to give himself a lot of minions, which is going to deal a lot of damage to him, and he's not really able to do any villain control. You know what? I changed my mind. I don't think Thor is very survivable. I think he is very vulnerable to being killed if he is not careful. Spider-Man's deck is rife with Confuse and Stun and Tough, and he could even defend for 2 if he needed to. So yeah, I think Miles is very good at keeping himself alive. He only has 9 hit points, but he's so many ways to stop damage from coming in or preventing activations. Drax is similar to Thor in that I feel like I shouldn't give him a point for this, but Manus is so good at keeping him alive, and he has the 2 parries, which are also good at keeping him alive. Too stubborn to die. I'm going to say, you know, I've played more Drax than, I'm not going to say anybody else has played, but I've played more Drax than any of the other heroes in the game. And, you know, I didn't get killed that often. I think he does a good job of keeping himself alive. So that one surprises me, but I'm going to give him a point for that. She-Hulk is a weird one because she's trying to ride that line of getting as low in health as possible so she can play the Gamma Slam, plus the Focus Rage hits her pretty hard. She does have a lot of health to start, but she's not going to be defending herself. I'm going to say she's not very good at surviving. Venom is a lot like Miles Morales. He can get a lot of status effects, and he can just straight up cancel villain attacks. So I'm going to say he is good at keeping himself, and he could defend for 4 if he needed to, if he had both pistols out. Valkyrie, nah, she's just, you're never going to play this card anyway. Shield Maiden is just bad. So yeah, Valkyrie definitely needs help from something to keep her alive. Scarlet Witch, this is one that I think she gets a point for this. You know, there could be a lot of stun and confuse, but it is unreliable. She does have the magic seals, which is a really good card. So I'm going to say Scarlet Witch can defend herself pretty well, and she can exhaust to defend for 2. Rocket is pretty squishy. He can get some extra health, but he definitely needs help in keeping himself alive. Yeah. War Machine, he does have this upgraded chassis, and his basic activation isn't very important to him. I think he's pretty good at keeping himself alive. We're gonna give him a point for that. Vision definitely gets a point for this. The fact that he can go to intangible form and ignore pretty much all the minions, and then he has this very, very powerful defensive event. He's only got 1 of them, but yeah, just his intangible power alone is going to help keep him alive throughout the course of the game. So he gets a point for this. Man, Cyclops is really hard for me to rate in these. Part of it's because I haven't played him a lot, so similar to a couple other heroes, my takes on him might not be great, so be kind. But, you know, all of his cards are these upgrades that go on other characters, and he himself, it's like, well, I'm not sure what he's doing. He could be exhausting to defend, but I think he's probably going to need to be thwarting. This could be reducing, you know, I don't think he gets a point for this. Doctor Strange probably does. He has really good villain control, so he's going to be stunning, confusing a lot. He can go to Alter Ego to heal, and he can cancel the when revealed effects from time to time. So yeah, I think Doctor Strange is very good at keeping himself alive. So another pretty lopsided pile. So it's good that more heroes than not won't die over the course of most games. Okay, the 4th category, which I find to be very important, but some of you may disagree, is Alter Ego. How important is the Alter Ego to the hero, and how easily can they access it if they do need to? Now, in my opinion, the Alter Ego part of Marvel Champions is one of the things that makes this game so special and different from all the other superhero games. And that experience can be largely lost in solo just because it's really, really hard for heroes that don't have Confuse to get to Alter Ego. But there are so many awesome Alter Ego supports and abilities on the heroes in this game that it'd be a real shame if that part was just completely taken out of solo. You know, in multiplayer, it's so easy for people to flip down and take advantage of all that stuff. And in solo, sometimes it feels like a real struggle. Well, I think the best solo heroes should be able to use their Alter Ego. We want to get the fullest experience possible when we're playing solo. So this is one where I suspect it might be pretty lopsided in the other direction, but I do think the best solo hero should have a good Alter Ego and access to it. So now starting off with Valkyrie is not the best solo hero in this regard, just because she has a very difficult time getting to Alter Ego where she can't thwart very well, which is a real shame because she would really like to, because that's how she can take the Death Glow off of wherever it is. She can make good use of Annabelle, and she's got that Visit Valhalla event that's really strong too, but she cannot get the Alter Ego in solo, so she does not get a point for this. Ms. Marvel's tricky in that she desperately wants to go to Alter Ego, but she doesn't have anything built into her kit that's going to help her. But I'm actually going to give her a point for this because it's so clearly a part of her kit. If you're playing Ms. Marvel in solo, you're going to find a way to get to Alter Ego as frequently as you can. Even if it's only a couple times here and there, you're definitely going to be trying. So I'm going to give her a point for this. Drax could care less about his Alter Ego. Iron Man, definitely cares a lot about his alter ego, and I think the fact that it's just so necessary for him, and he's going to get a point for this, even though you might lose the game because of it, because you're going to be staying in alter ego for the first turn or two, and then solo that could be a death sentence. But he's going to get a point for this just because it's so important to him. Ironheart desperately wants to be an alter ego to get those progress counters, and if she can get Ronnie out, make use of her, so she gets a point for this. Quicksilver doesn't have access to Confuse, so it would be difficult for him to get to alter ego, and it's not that important to him anyway, so I'm not going to give him anything for this one. Rocket would really like to get to alter ego so that he can use his Tinker ability, but he also doesn't have access to Confuse, but he is really good at thwarting, so we're just going to assume that you managed to thwart the scheme down low enough that you felt safe to go, because I think he's going to, similar to Ms. Marvel, he's going to do what he has to get to alter ego once in a while. Gamora, this card's pretty good, but she doesn't really care that much about going to alter ego, so we don't need to worry about her. Black Widow pretty much lives in alter ego, so if anybody's getting a point for this category, it's her. Now, She-Hulk has this split personality that lets her flip to alter ego, but that's just to draw some cards, and then you're going to flip back up. She might need to go to alter ego once in a while to have a bigger hand size, but I think it's going to cost her a lot in the game if she tries to do that too often, so she does not get a point for this. Hawkeye has literally no alter ego to speak of. Adam Warlock, he doesn't have any Confuse, so he could find it difficult to get here, but he desperately wants to, because this Soul World is going to do so much work for him that I think that this is important enough to him that he's going to find a way to get down at least once. This is one of those that's right on the line. I feel like I shouldn't, but I'm going to. I don't think Gwen cares that much about her alter ego. This is a nice card, and she also has a pretty decent alter ego action, but I don't think it's that crucial to her gameplay. Captain Marvel, she has some Confuse built in with her ally, and she draws a ton of cards in alter ego, so I think it is important to her. I don't think Kitty cares that much. She can get there. She has a Confuse, and she has a decent support, but I don't think it's that important to her. We're not going to give her a point for alter ego. Spectrum does not care about alter ego at all. Venom, I think, does. He gets Confuse, and this is a really, really strong support. It's nice for him to be able to heal, especially with the fact that he's going to be spending health on resources. So I think this definitely goes in the win category for Venom. War Machine, it's so unbelievably crucial to his strategy. He's going to get a point for this, even though it's really, really bad for him to do this. But if you're going to play War Machine in solo, you're going to get the alter ego experience that I think is necessary. So he gets a point, even though I don't know if it's going to cost you the game or not. This card is really, really nice for Nova, but yeah, I don't think he needs it to play well. If you're playing multiplayer and you get to access this once in a while, I think that's going to be nice, but I don't think it's crucial for Nova. Miles desperately wants to go to alter ego, and he has such easy access to it between all the Confuses and these two copies of Double Life that he can flip down, make use of Jefferson Davis and Genki, shuffle a card back into his deck, potentially heal because this might ready him. Yeah, Miles is huge on his alter ego, which of course makes big sense for the character. You know, all the superheroes, that's kind of the whole thing with Marvel Comics, right? Like the alter ego, your real life interferes with your superhero life and it's important to them. But they've really made a special emphasis on that with Miles, and they did a very good job of representing that in the card game. Star-Lord, I don't think cares that much about his alter ego. He might need to flip down and heal because he's trying to kill himself really hard. And Bad Boy is a pretty good way to get there, but I'm not going to give him a point for the alter ego experience. Wasp breaks my heart here because nobody wants to go to alter ego more than Wasp, I feel like, or at least not too many, and she just can't. She needs giant help to get to alter ego. So as much as I want to give her a point for this because it's so important to her, I've played a ton of Wasp and it can be a real pain. Now, I've said with a few other heroes that they want to go so badly they're going to find a way. Okay, I'll give her a point because it's so important to her. Her alter ego ability is so strong, but I just wish they had given her one Confused to get down there. Cyclops cares very, very much about his alter ego, being able to pull those tactics right out of his deck. And of course, you're probably going to have some of the X-Men supports like Danger Room, Cerebro, things like that. Yeah, he's another one of those that I think is important enough to him that he is going to find a way to get down at least a couple times. And that's the thing. I'm not expecting you to be able to play the whole game in alter ego and solo, but I don't want it to be just like a non-factor either. Like, I think it's so important to be able to experience the whole game when you're playing solo if you're going to be playing the best heroes. And so you want to be able to reliably go to alter ego a couple times per game, which is really all it's going to take. But that way you at least got to feel like you did all the things that you're supposed to do. You got to use your cool cards. Like Golden City, for example, is such an awesome card. that if I'm playing Black Panther in solo and I do get to play this, I'm gonna want to flip down and use this a couple times. And this is one of the best alter ego supports in the game. Now, he doesn't have Confuse or anything that's going to help him get there. You know, so I'm actually not going to give him a point. This is not crucial to his gameplay. It's just nice to have. So I think that's probably much more of a multiplayer card. Now, SPDR, I think, definitely wants to get to alter ego. Because of the way her identity is split into 2 cards, it's really easy for her to flip down, heal, and draw 2 cards because she can use both of her identity cards. And then, you know, she's just going to have a lot more cards in her hand when she flips up. And she has this card that's going to help her get there in the middle of a round. Then she can change back into hero form. So I think she gets a point for this. I don't think Wolverine cares that much about his alter ego. Yes, his recovery is huge. But by flipping down, you're giving up the 2 free healing you would have gotten in hero form anyway. So his recovery is kind of only 4, which isn't that special. And this card isn't all that great. So he's not getting a point for alter ego. Hulk. Hulk would love to go to alter ego as often as possible, but I think that's just not a big enough part of his game. I think Vision would quite like to go to alter ego occasionally, if nothing else, just to use this to get Vivian back, and I think that's a big part of his strategy, and the fact that Vivian can then thwart for 3 to help him catch up makes that important enough. Vivian is important enough to his strategy that I think that alone kind of gives him a point for this. Phoenix, I don't think Phoenix cares about her alter ego very much. Captain America is another one. He's tricky because this is a pretty strong card and he could play an ally cheaper. He doesn't have Confuse, but he can thwart really well. I'm just trying to decide how important I think it is to his gameplay. I think it's just important enough to get a point. Scarlet Witch gets a lot of value out of her alter ego and she gets Confused, so that's pretty easy to choose there. Not sure why I grabbed this Doctor Strange card instead of the Sanctum to represent alter ego, but this is what I have, so that's what I did. I don't think alter ego is very important to Doctor Strange at all. The Sanctum is nice, but he has access to his alter ego. I just don't think it's important enough for his gameplay. Like, he might flip down just because he can, but it's not something that I think qualifies him as best in that category. Thor should probably go to alter ego as infrequently as possible. Nebula is very similar to Black Widow again in the way that she sort of wants to live in alter ego, and she has a little Confused, so she could potentially get there pretty easily. But yeah, she draws so many cards for playing the techniques. Combat Ready lets you shuffle them back in. This is a hugely important card for her. So she definitely gets a point for alter ego. This is actually more evenly split than I thought it was going to be. I thought most heroes would not be, but the more I talk about it, and that just speaks to how important, again, I think it is to the design of the game. Most heroes get a lot of value of going to alter ego. Even if they don't have special cards, just having that extra card in your hand, the opportunity to heal, that alone is very, very strong and worthwhile. So, but I'm only giving the points to the heroes that I think really, really, really want to do it. Colossus, similar to War Machine, pretty much has to, and he has access to Confuse, so he gets a point for this. Spider-Woman, I can't say enough good things about Spider-Woman. This is a really, really strong support that it lets you search the top 5 cards for an aspect. It's not just a card draw, and she has Confuse in her kit and good thwarting, so I think she likes to go to alter ego when she can. Her alter ego power isn't all that great. To be able to look at the top card of a deck, I don't think that's very special, but being able to fish a card out to, the whole thing with her deck, being able to build 2 different aspects means you probably got some cool combos in there, and this is going to help you put those combos together. So Spider-Man would love to get to alter ego once in a while to use Aunt May and his scientist power, but I think he would struggle very greatly to do that more than once in a game. And Ant-Man, I grabbed Wasp here because there's literally nothing in Ant-Man's kit that cares about being an alter ego other than when he flips down, he heals for 1. So Ant-Man does not care about going to alter ego. Groot cares quite a bit about going to alter ego. He wants to use this card. He wants to use his alter ego power. The problem is he's very, very bad at thwarting, so he's kind of in a similar spot as Valkyrie, in that even though he would really like to, it's not necessary. See, with War Machine is necessary. So even though he's bad at thwarting, I gave him a point for it just because he's got to do it or he's not going to be able to play his game. Groot can live without his alter ego, so I think maybe the once per game flip you generally always get in solo is going to have to be good enough for Groot. Now, if he's playing Justice, he can use Think Fast, but we're not factoring in the aspect cards. It's just how good is the hero with this. I don't think Storm cares about her alter ego much at all. I don't think the designers do either. This card is just so boring. Like this, I love Storm to pieces, but when I saw this card spoiled, I was just like, is that real? I just think that's such a boring card. Oh well, anyway. And then Spider-Ham definitely can get to Alter Ego. He has lots of Confuse in his deck, and he heals for a ton, which he's going to want to do, and he gets free tune counters while he's done. Yeah, I think he definitely gets a point for this. So this ended up being pretty even, actually, which is a good thing. I just wasn't expecting that to be the case. So now we move on to the final category. And the final criteria for what I think makes a hero particularly good at playing in solo and Marvel Champions is how versatile is their deck building. Can they play well in all 4 aspects, and do you have a lot of options for when you're building their decks, or are you compensating for so many of their weaknesses in solo that you don't really have a lot of options for the types of decks you can build for them? So that's what I'm thinking about here. I think most heroes will be strong in this category just because, again, you would want that to be the case. But I've been wrong in some of the other categories, so we'll see. I think Storm definitely gets a point for this. I haven't played her a ton. She's new, but seems to me that she could play well in all 4 aspects, and her weather deck just gives her so much versatility. Another part of this category is just versatility in gameplay. I was actually going to make that its own separate category, but the more I thought about it, it just seemed like the two go hand in hand. If your hero is very good at managing everything, if they're versatile enough, their abilities are straightforward enough that they can do a little bit of everything, then you can build decks that do the same thing, versus heroes that are very narrow in their focus, then your deck is probably going to have to be narrow in a different focus to make up for it. So in the end, I made it the same category. So if you can play with versatility, you can probably build with versatility as well, and I think that is definitely the case with Storm. Vision I'm of 2 minds about, because I do think he can play well in all 4 aspects, and you could generally build any kind of deck you want for him. The problem is, I think you're pretty much just always going to build towards Vivian. This is actually one of the reasons I don't like Vision very much. Now, you could just choose to not make it all about Vivian, but when she's this strong, it's really hard to not focus on her. So I kind of want to not give him a point just because of her, but I will, because he does play well in all 4 aspects, and you could choose. That's more of a me problem. You could just choose to play Vivian casually and not build the whole deck around her, even though the best Vision decks are all built pretty much around Vivian. Not all the best ones. Brand's red deck is super strong, and it doesn't revolve around Vivian. So now Star-Lord, I do think, is very versatile in his deck building. His ability to reduce the cost of cards gives him so many options in the way that he can build his decks, and he can build them up so fast. Now, he runs the risk of killing himself if he's doing that, but that's just his whole gameplay. That's always going to be the case. I'm not going to count that against him for his deck building. You can build pretty much any kind of Star-Lord deck you want, and so far we're 3 for 3. Let's see if we can keep it going. I think this card right here is one of the best cards in the whole game. It's so simple, but it's just so unbelievably powerful and versatile. For 2 that you get the 3 damage and a ready, that could translate to 4 thwarting, as well as the 3 damage or just 7 damage, whatever you want to do with Kitty. And then if you're boosting her stats in any way, you get so much more out of this. I think this card alone almost makes it so that you can build her deck any way you want to. But just the way she works, she has so much strength in every category that I think she definitely plays well with every kind of deck, and I'm talking way too long about every one of these. Gamora, I do not think has versatility in deck building. She doesn't play very well in leadership at all. There's just very little synergy there. And she just really wants to lean so hard into events that when you build Gamora decks, I don't think they look all that different from each other, so I don't think Gamora gets a point for this. Drax, in a similar fashion, I literally have never played Drax Injustice for how many, probably dozens if not hundreds of times I've played Drax. I pretty much only ever played him in protection or leadership. So, and that's just me, but this is based on my experience. I just don't think he plays very well. Most people, I think, only play him in protection, so he is not very versatile in his deck building. Super, super fun to play, but I think most Drax decks look very similar. Doctor Strange is just so good in every category. You can definitely build any kind of deck you want for him in any aspect. Now, they are going to be somewhat limited in the fact that you're going to be including all of the Mystic cards, so that reduces your options, but you're definitely going to take those. You're probably taking Cosmo, so you're really looking for like 18 cards to put in a Doctor Strange deck. That doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity, but I'm not going to hold that against him too much because I don't want to hold it against Scarlet Witch later. I think he gets a point for this. She-Hulk, she's one of those that I think in solo has so many weaknesses that you're going to have to build a deck to compensate, so that doesn't give you a lot of freedom. I'm not saying you can't build good She-Hulk decks. This is, again, just reiterating, this is being particularly good in a category. I don't think Hulk is very versatile at all. In his deck building, Hulk Smash says it all. Like, they designed Hulk to do this, and anytime you try to build a Hulk deck that wants to do something other than this, you can, and it might work, but you're not really playing Hulk the way he wants to be played. So I don't think he's very versatile in that way. Spider-Woman probably has the most balanced, versatile kit, or at least top 3 in the whole game. All of her events are so strong, and the fact that she has 3 of these that ready her, and her stats are going to be 2/2/2, 3/3/3, 4/4/4, that you not only can build any kind of deck based on that, but the whole 2 aspect thing, that's kind of her whole thing, is you can build any kind of deck. So if anybody gets a point in this category, it is Spider-Woman. Spider-Man, for solo play, I don't think is terribly versatile. I think he can play in all the aspects, though I think he would really struggle in aggression to win unless you were playing Rush. And I didn't really factor Rush into any of these categories. Yes, some of these heroes, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, like Star-Lord, Wolverine, Captain Marvel, they can win games so fast if you build them a certain way that you just be like, well, they're the best solo heroes because they're always going to win. I didn't factor that in because I don't think you're really playing the game at that point. You're just doing a funny thing. So this was really meant to be more about, playing a game out like you normally would. And I think Spider-Man definitely needs enough help in solo that he doesn't get a point for this category. He's not terrible, but he's not particularly strong. Now this Spider-Man, on the other hand, I think is very strong. His kit is just so powerful, and it does a little bit of everything, so you are very free to build any kind of Miles Morales deck you want, and the fact that he has the Web Warrior and Champion trait gives you even more versatility. There's so many powerful cards in both of those traits that you can definitely build any kind of Miles deck you want to. Spider-Ham is very similar in that way. I can't think of any reason why he wouldn't play well in all 4 aspects. And his kit is just so good that you could build pretty much any kind of deck you want to. Yeah, he definitely gets a point for this. This is another one of those categories where I feel like I'm just going to sort of repeat myself a lot, which is unfortunate, but when a hero is just very, very versatile in the way that they play, it means their decks can also be, and hers is so hyper-focused on doing exactly what she's doing that you can just build her in whatever fashion you want to. Now, that being said, I don't think she plays particularly well in leadership, just because if you don't have the right cards to get you out of the form that you're in, leadership isn't really going to help you in the same way that, if you're playing Justice, you could still remove threat, or if you're playing Aggression, you could still deal some damage. But I mean, it's funny, she came as leadership, so it's funny that I'm saying that. I'm going to give her the point, but I don't think she's particularly good in leadership, but she's really good in the other 3 aspects. SPDR, super good in all 4 aspects, just unbelievably versatile gameplay. You can build her deck however you want, but she's one of those that's playing her cards and mostly only her cards, so it kind of doesn't matter what you put into her deck. So is that versatility, or is that just indifference? I don't know, but we're going to call it versatility. I think Thor has enough weaknesses in solo play that his deck building is somewhat limited there. I think there are definitely certain deck strategies that he wouldn't play very well in, and I don't know that he's good in every aspect. Ant-Man's one that I definitely think plays well in all 4 aspects, and he's got such a great, well-rounded kit that you could build all kinds of different kinds of Ant-Man decks. They would all look different, and they'd be a lot of fun. Venom, I feel like I should start running through these really quickly because I definitely feel like you can build pretty much any kind of Venom deck. Plays well in all the aspects, and he is kind of limited in the sense that he really wants to get his guns out, and so he is sort of pigeonholed in a direction, but that doesn't really change how you build his decks. Valkyrie is another one of those that I think is weak enough in solo that you're really going to have to build her deck up to help her out a lot, which doesn't give you a lot of freedom to build creative decks for her in solo play. So she is not going to get a point for this category. Hawkeye's kit is so self-contained. Once he gets the quiver and the expert marksman out, he doesn't even care about what the rest of the cards you're playing are because he can still draw and shoot an arrow regardless of what's in your hand. So whatever you put in your deck is completely optional. I guess the point of what I'm saying is I think he actually has some of the most versatile deck building because you can do anything with him. Captain Marvel, yeah, you can definitely build any kind of Captain Marvel deck you want to. She is somewhat limited in that you want to put a lot of lightning resources in, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to play towards that particular strength. So I'm going to say she gets a point for versatility in deck building. War Machine needs a lot of help, I think, to be successful in solo in all the aspects. So I don't find him to be all that versatile in how he plays or how you build his decks. Nebula, on the other hand, definitely for sure is, you can build a lot of different Nebula decks, especially because the way her techniques work, they all give her a special ability, so you could build decks around just one of the techniques. So there's just so much freedom and experimentation and creativity in the way you can build Nebula up. Ms. Marvel, I'm actually not going to give a point for this. I don't think she plays well in leadership at all. There's just no synergy there. And you definitely want to be focusing on putting events in her deck, so it kind of limits how you want to build her up. So I'm going to say not so versatile. Groot, I think plays well in all the aspects in multiplayer, but I think in solo, he pretty much just has to be in Justice to be really strong. So I'm going to say he is not versatile. I think Black Widow is. Her preparations just give her so much control over the game, regardless of what aspect she's playing. And while you might be encouraged to add more preparations to her deck, which could limit the deck building, I don't think you have to. She's got plenty in her own deck. So I'm going to give her a point for this. I think she's really good there. I'm not going to give Gwen a point for this. I think she's great, but she's not super good in leadership. You know, she's just so strong in protection. She's kind of like Drax. Like when you think of a hero so strongly pointed in one direction for an aspect, I don't really think of them as that versatile in deck building. Yeah, you can, but should you? Or should you just always play Ghost Spider in protection? I think Black Panther is really, really versatile in his deck building. He's got so many straightforward abilities, tons of resources. You can build any kind of Black Panther deck and you're going to have a good time. I've definitely played a lot of Wasp decks in every aspect, and I think she does really well, so I'm going to give her a point for this. Scarlet Witch, same thing, just so versatile in her gameplay. Definitely can build any kind of deck. And like I said with Doctor Strange, yeah, half of her deck is going to be taken up with the Mystic cards, but I don't want to hold that against her because those Mystic cards are fun, and you can still do cool things with her. I think Quicksilver also falls in the versatile category. You know, his very straightforward abilities allow him to manage the board, so it kind of doesn't matter what cards you put in his deck. They're all going to be helpful. And I think he plays well in all four aspects, though aggression probably isn't great in solo. I think he could still pull it off because he could do a lot of the thwarting and then the cards could do everything for him. Captain America is one of the quintessential versatile heroes for his deck building. Definitely plays well in all four aspects, and he just manages everything so well. You can just build him up in so many different ways, and he's going to be well for you. Phoenix is one, I think she is versatile just because her kit is so weird. She has so many different cards in her hero kit that just do so many weird random things, so I think you can just build kind of any deck you want for her, and she's going to be able to manage the game well enough with her hero cards that you can do other cool things with the aspects. So definitely going to give her a point. Rocket, I do think, can play well in every aspect, but I think he is decently limited in his deck building. He doesn't have access to all the strategies because you definitely have to find ways to keep him alive, which is going to take up a good chunk of your deck. So as much as I love Rocket, I don't know that he's overly versatile in his deck building. Plus, he has such a huge emphasis on minions, so I'm not going to give him a point. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think he's among the best. Cyclops, kind of similar to what I said about Ghost Spider and Drax. He just so obviously wants to play well in leadership. Yes, he can play in all the aspects, but I am not... It's tricky, too, because since he can use all the allies, it kind of doesn't matter what aspect you're playing. You're still going to be able to do the main thing Cyclops seems to want to be doing. I feel like I keep really struggling to rank Cyclops' cards, and it's only because I've played it. It's partially because I've only played him a couple times, and partially just because he's got a very strange kit. You know, it's full of those upgrades that just work so differently than most other heroes' cards, and he does have some powerful attack cards too. But you know what? Just the fact that he can use all the allies, I'm gonna say you could do some different things with Cyclops. We're gonna say he's versatile. I don't feel like Colossus is super versatile. I don't know he's going to play well in all four aspects. He's really, really focused on the thing that he's doing, and I think he needs help in some other areas. So I'm going to say he's not. I think Wolverine is pretty versatile in the fact that you could build any kind of deck form that you want to, though it's probably going to include a lot of healing or damage prevention or things like that. So is he limited in that way? I don't think so. I think you could play Wolverine just about any way you want to. Definitely in all four aspects. Adam Warlock, the fact that he can use all four aspects pretty much speaks for itself. He's definitely versatile in his deck building. I don't think Iron Man is. He definitely needs a lot of help in solo, so you're going to have to build his deck a very certain way. And you're definitely going to want to be including tech. And he's also sort of limited to certain resources he's going to be. So yeah, I'm going to say in solo play, he is not very versatile in his deck building. Nova, for sure, is He can play well in all 4 aspects. His kit is very straightforward and so efficient that he can handle all the threats, and then whatever deck you kind of want to build with him to go along with that, I think is going to work really, really well. And Ironheart kind of falls in that category of similar to SPDR. She just wants to be playing her own cards so very badly that it almost doesn't matter what cards you put in her deck. And I think she plays well in all 4 aspects. So we're going to give her a point for this. So this was decently lopsided on the side of positive, which is good. So most heroes, I think, apparently, are pretty versatile in their deck building for solo play. Okay, so now I have gone through and gathered up all the cards and tallied the points, and I don't think this was a perfect system, but it was fun to talk about all the heroes. Let's remember that. It was fun to talk about them because some of them came in a little bit lower than I was expecting, but it doesn't mean they were bad. They just, I don't know, it's just kind of how it worked out. So let's look at the heroes that only had 1 point based on my 5 criteria and see if we agree that they're among the not as great solo heroes. So we have Hawkeye, and I think I'm okay with that. He probably wouldn't be much higher than this for me. Kind of surprised to see Star-Lord down here. I must have been pretty hard on him. I feel like he's definitely not among the worst solo heroes. You can certainly play him, but you just have to be careful. I think I factored in my very risky play style there. I think I agree that Groot probably isn't among the best solo heroes. He's not great. I definitely don't think Valkyrie's a very good solo hero. She-Hulk, same. I can see that her ending up down here. Kind of sad to see Drax all the way down here. Apparently I didn't give him any points except for staying alive. Like, I guess being able to attack for a lot didn't count for much in these rankings. Maybe I should have factored that in a little bit more harder, but this was just for fun. So, and Rocket is another one that, no, he's definitely way better, so I'm not sure about my Rocket takes, but there's the 1-pointers. And then those who got 2 points were Ghost Spider, another one that I think definitely deserves more points than that. She's not among the best, I don't think, for solo play, but she's incredibly fun and certainly deserves more than 2 points. I think Iron Man fits down here pretty well for solo. Can be done, but not among the best. Same with Spider-Man. Oh, there's another Star-Lord card. And another Rocket card. Okay, I got my piles mixed up. There we go. Star-Lord and Rocket both got 2 points. I feel better. Those were the 2 I didn't like being in the low category. So, okay, we're going to call it, yeah. I feel definitely better about that. Gamora only getting 2 kind of surprises me because I think of her as a strong solo hero, but I guess not based on my criteria anyway. Colossus, I haven't played enough to know one way or the other, but I could kind of see where he might be limited. Hulk, kind of surprised he got 2 points. Quicksilver surprises me. I think I would have thought of him as higher, but I think I didn't like his alter ego. I felt like he took a while to set up, so yeah, I guess so. And then, yeah, War Machine doesn't surprise me. I'm not a big fan of him for solo play. So now that we get into 3, you know, I don't know that the difference here is massively huge as we move on to the next categories, because I definitely really, really like a lot of these 3s in solo play. I think Ms. Marvel's great in solo, so, you know, this certainly isn't to say that these heroes aren't good. Like, because, like, Doctor Strange I only gave 3 points to. I think a lot of people would say he's among the best. So kind of surprised that worked out. And so what I'm seeing here, Spectrum I think very highly. I think pretty highly of all these. So I'm thinking the difference between 3, 4, and 5 might not be that great, though I do think the 5s are probably all the best ones. Black Panther I feel like might have been a 4. Same with Storm, but this is where they ended up. I think Ant-Man is in a pretty good spot. I think he's good, but, you know, not the top tier. Nebula feels right here to me. Nova surprises me a little bit. I would have thought of him as higher, and I haven't played Phoenix enough to have a strong opinion. But so those are our sort of middle ground solo heroes. Very, very good, but still getting even better. I definitely agree that SPDR should be near the top of these rankings. Adam Warlock is one that kind of surprises me. I ranked him this high. You can build any kind of deck with him, but it can be a little unreliable because you only have 1 of each card, but that's what I went with. Black Widow feels right at home right here. Really, really good. Not quite the best, but way up there. If you'd asked me before I did this, I would have thought Venom would have been top tier, but I think I dinged him a little bit for being a bit slow to set up. Same with Spider-Ham. I definitely expected him to be top 5, but I think I hit him with the same thing. doesn't hold him back much at all if you've actually played him, but just for the sake of the criteria. And I thought I was dinging Cyclops quite a bit while I was going through these, but apparently he got 4 points, so he's doing great. Captain Marvel with 4 points. That feels pretty good to me. Now, Wolverine probably is going to be a lot of people's 1, 2, or 3, so I can't remember what I dinged him for. Oh, yeah, he doesn't care about Alter Ego. And that's the one that I think, if anything about this is controversial, the fact that some incredibly strong heroes lost a point, because I think Alter Ego is very important. Maybe other people don't. I think a lot of people don't. So this is just my take on it again. But when I play, I want to be going to Alter Ego occasionally. So I find the heroes that don't care about it a little bit less interesting. And that's all this is, a little bit lower. Shadowcat feels like could have been a 5 to me, but definitely these 4s are very strong. And Ironheart as well, right up here towards the top. So now we get to see who my foolproof ranking system determined were the best solo heroes in the game. We got Vision, who got points in all 5 categories. Captain America, surprising absolutely no one. Miles Morales, obviously. Spider-Woman for sure. And here's the one I'm most embarrassed about and kind of makes me want to redo the whole video. Apparently my Wasp takes were awful, because I like Wasp a lot and my bias must have shown hard. I do not think she is among the absolute best solo heroes. I don't know how that happened that she got all 5. So she's definitely at the bottom of this category. I would have put her probably in a 3 as far as overall quality of solo play. So when I go back and edit, I'm going to be really funny. I'm going to be really laughing at every single time I gave her a point that I probably shouldn't have. And then Scarlet Witch makes perfect sense to me. So before I filmed this, my assumption was that Spider-Ham and Venom and Wolverine would all end up in this category, but I hadn't actually planned the whole thing out in my mind. I was just thinking of who do I think is the best solo heroes. But I didn't want to think about it too hard because I wanted these takes to be on camera, so I wasn't really ranking them ahead of time. But most of the ones here, we take Wasp out. Gosh, what was I thinking? Scarlet Witch, for sure, I think belongs in this category. Spider-Woman, Miles Morales, and Cap. I actually would take Vision out too. I don't think he's among the 5 best solo heroes. So I'm gonna yank Vision and Wasp. Yeah, I think if you're looking at who, well, let's get a better camera shot there. I think if you're looking at who are the absolute best heroes to play this game in solo, I think these 4 make perfect sense. You can build any kind of decks you want for these heroes. They give you such a complete experience. You can do everything you want to do in this game. You can build any kind of deck, and they're going to be so strong. Like, you are going to win all of your games when you play these heroes with pretty much any kind of deck. And I think that's true for a lot more than just these 4. But if we're looking to crown the best solo hero, and then we got to take it a step further, we have to pick who is the absolute best one. And this is just going to be based purely on my opinion at this point, though obviously it kind of all was. I think the first one I would pull out of this group, and it is a really tough call, I think I'm going with Scarlet Witch. I love her to pieces, but I think her abilities are unreliable enough that to be just enough to take her out of the ranking out of these 4. Leaving these 3, I mean, it's a hair's breadth. I'm gonna grab Steve. I think the other 2, it really comes down to their status effects. You know, Steve does have some stun, but it's a really expensive card. You know, these 2 can so effortlessly stun and confuse the villain. And I know that's not going to be helpful in every single scenario, but it's helpful in most of them. So I'm not going to count Stalwart and Steady against them too much, but it's not a non-factor either. But out of the ones who are remaining, these 2, just having the access to the Confuse, and then the deck building versatility also pushes these 2 over Steve for me a little bit. Hers being able to build in 2 aspects, and Miles having the Web Warriors and the Champions. I actually think those are more valuable than the Avengers trait that Captain America has. The Avengers cards are good, but they're mostly limited to just leadership, so you can't build in other aspects. You know, Miles, Web Warrior, and Champions, most of those cards are basic, so he's always going to have access to those. And now we come to the part where I have to confess, if you're watching the 12 Plays of Christmas, I said in that one that I had kept 2 heroes out for a certain video that I was going to film. And so my original plan for this video was just to talk about how these 2 are the best solo heroes in the game, because I actually thought that before I did this. And then I filmed that video and the sound was terrible. So I was like, well, now I got to do it again. And then before I got to it, I had this idea that I thought would be way more fun to go through and rank everybody. So in the end, I guess I didn't have to keep these 2 out of the 12 Plays of Christmas just because they're hero cards. I didn't want to wrap them up in the wrapping paper because I was planning on using them in the video, and then I didn't end up using them anyway. So none of that matters now, but if you're confused as to what happened based on what I said in the other video, this is what happened. So if I have to choose between these 2, who do I think is the absolute best hero you can play in solo among so many other great ones, for sure, I am going to give the nod to Jessica. I think Spider-Woman, and I almost wanted to make this its own video, but I'll just do it here. I think Spider-Woman is the perfect Marvel Champions hero. I'm not saying she is the strongest, but I think she is the best at representing what this game wants to do. Her kit covers all of the bases. She does literally everything, and she does it well. She does it cheaply. The stat boosting and readying, all the status effects. She has resources. She has a really strong ally. She's got everything you want to do. And I don't have her hero card here, and you can build in 2 aspects. That is such a hugely powerful thing. I think that's way more powerful than Adam Warlock's ability because you're limited to 1 per card. Here, any single combo you've ever thought about playing in this game, you know, that doesn't require 3 aspects, I guess, you can do. And there are so many insanely cool Spider-Woman decks that you can build. And for me, again, this is all based just on my opinion, deck building is such a crucial part of the absolute full experience of this game. So the fact that she could build pretty much literally any deck you could conceive of, and her kit is going to support anything you're trying to do. I think Spider-Woman is the perfect Marvel Champions hero for solo play. Now, multiplayer, I'm not remotely qualified to talk about that, what even makes a good multiplayer hero. There are definitely other people better suited to talk about that. But for me, who loves playing solo, if I could only have one hero for the rest of my life, it would be Jess, because you could just build all the cool decks and her kit can handle anything the villain wants to do. So that's my take. There were a lot of bad takes in the middle there. Hopefully this final one was a good one. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I think this video ended up being longer than I wanted it to. I apologize. I know my videos are getting too long. I'm working on that. But I thank you so much for joining me. And again, just thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel. It's such a, I've said this before, but it's such a vote of confidence to a content creator. Every single time someone subscribes, it's such a special moment. So I really, really appreciate it. And I thank you for joining me for this. And I better get back to filming those 12 Plays of Christmas, because I've got quite a few of those still to get out this month. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope to see you next time we get up a game. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.